I think there's also value in just getting the answer no from investors. What that meant is you have to plan around not getting external capital. That can be really challenging, but it actually goes back to the same thing. Like, you need to figure out how to make the business be able to stand on its own 2 feet. And that might have even been more valuable than any of the other things I heard from investors. As stressful and hard as that is, it is the type of challenge that it either kills you or it makes you much, much stronger as a company. And so
my name is Sameer Shariff. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Cambly. So Cambly is an English app. It's really simple. You open the app, you press a button, and within a few seconds we connect you to a friendly native English speaker over video chat. In terms of capital raised, we've raised about $60 million in the history of the company, including a Series A led by Bessemer Venture Partners and a Series B led by Benchmark. We have paying customers in over 150 countries around the world, and so very much a global business. From a very, very young age, I was just always really curious, tinkering around with things. I was the kid who was asking a ton of questions, just trying to learn everything I could. I started programming at a pretty young age. And then when I went to college, I decided to major in electrical engineering. I'm going to focus on that. And I meanwhile also got a minor in computer science. And then when I graduated, and then I ended up, Google was kind of up and coming in those times. And so I ended up getting a job at Google. This is 2006. So it was pretty early in Google's days. It was like post-IPO, but they were much, much smaller, the company, than they are today. I learned a ton at Google. I really enjoyed my time there. I just learned about how a really well company is run, really valuable lessons on how to build a scalable service outside of that. I specifically worked on the search quality team. And so I worked a lot with data and metrics. And it was actually a great crash course on how to think about that and how to relate metrics to businesses. And so, I think Google really had a very data-driven decision-making culture. That was something that I absorbed a lot of and then brought along with me to Cambly as well. And we try to make decisions really based on data. I was actually on the team that helped build the A/B testing framework for Google. Back then, they were relatively early in using that technology in search. And so I helped build that. And then obviously I took a lot of lessons away from that. And yeah, I think a combo of sort of great software engineering skills, how a really strong company is run. And then I think sort of data-driven decision-making methodologies you could use that worked at Google and also you can bring them to a startup. Kevin and I both grew up here in the US. We went through the American school system, and as part of that, we took foreign languages. For me personally, I took Spanish, and I wasn't really that good at it. I was actually quite bad at it, and I kind of just thought I wasn't a languages person. And then independent of that, I love to travel. And I took one trip in particular to Argentina where I spent some time traveling on my own, and I found myself in situations where I was surrounded by people that only spoke Spanish. When I did that, I got so much better, so much faster than I ever did in the classroom environment. That was kind of my own experience, and Kevin, my co-founder, really similar experience learning French and then traveling to France. And so we kind of got together around this idea, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do that whenever we want. There's plenty of people that speak those languages, French and Spanish. They just don't happen to live near us. And product people and as technologists, we thought, hey, this seems like the kind of thing that technology could solve. That was kind of where the idea for Cambly came from. But as we looked at the market, we quickly realized that the world wants to learn English. And so we decided we would focus and start with that. I think we always kind of had the vision of this is a really big and important problem in the world. It's something that I think not enough people are focusing on, and we really thought we could build something new and valuable in the market. English education is an enormous problem in the world. Actually, a lot of us in the English-speaking world, I think, underestimate how big of a problem it is. But if you zoom out, there's about 8 billion people in the world. About 6 billion of them don't speak English. About 1.5 billion people are actively trying to learn English right now. But it's a problem that those of us who are English speakers don't really see every day. We don't feel it. We speak English ourselves. The people we know, our family, our friends, it's not a coincidence that they speak English as well because we have to talk to them all the time. We were pretty lean and kind of scrappy from the early days. We built the initial product ourselves. We were the only 2 tutors on the platform initially, and so we would literally spend our days writing code and building the product, interrupted every time a student wanted to call in and talk to a tutor. I remember actually one conversation with a Brazilian student really early on, maybe a couple months into starting the company, where I was talking to him and he was speaking in English with me and telling me about kind of his life and his journey. And I asked him at some point, I was like, oh, how did you learn English? Your English is seems pretty good. And he's like, I learned English only from movies and music.
I don't know a single person in my life, none of my friends, none of my family, no one speaks English. That story really stuck with me because, here was this teenage kid in Brazil, really wanted to learn English, but he didn't know anyone who spoke English. He stumbles across this app and he presses a button, and then I show up, a native English speaker, on demand 24/7 whenever he wants. I kind of described it as like an American in your pocket. That change, is such a dramatic change for him. I think it struck me, as the power of what we were actually building. And so I think those kind of things kind of helped us get a sense of what we're really building, what we're going after. If you're starting a company, make sure it's something you really care about and would be excited to work on for, in my case, 10 years. The fact that this is has such enormous potential, we are still very, very early in actually realizing that potential. I think that's what kind of gets me going. When I get up in the morning and why am I excited to work on this problem? It's because I think Cambly is having really positive impact in the world. And I think Cambly is a very, very small fraction of what it could become. That has motivated me for 10 years, and I suspect that it could motivate for me for another 10 years and beyond. And so I'm very happy to be on this road, and I'm happy there's not a finish line. I'm happy that we can keep on working at it and keep getting better as a product, better as a company, and help more and more people in the world over the years. What I found, I think, each time I went out to fundraise, it often went kind of one of two ways. It either went really smoothly and really well, or it not well at all, and it was really painful, and it dragged out in just getting the answer no from investors. But yeah, we've definitely had moments where our growth slowed down. We've had challenging fundraising moments, in that first year, even before Y Combinator, we had gone out to raise a round, and we talked to a lot of different people. No one we talked to got excited to invest, and I remember having a conversation with my co-founder at the moment where we're like, we both think this is a really good idea, but everyone we're talking to seems to think otherwise. Are we missing something? And I think in that moment we said, well, we should we believe in it. We should keep working on it, and we should just keep that in mind that there's a chance we're just we're deluding ourselves and we're wrong. Let's look at the data and make sure the data says that too. And the data was saying actually people want this thing. The business was growing, the numbers, and I think the business helped kind of motivate me through some of those periods until we were able to eventually get people who were excited about investing and kind of backing the business. Investors care a lot about unit economics. Are you growing the business in a healthy, sustainable way? And can you acquire a customer for far less than their value is to you? When we got pushed on that, I think in some cases we didn't have the best answers. We'd kind of let our margins get smaller. We were maybe doing some things that weren't going to serve us for years to come. What happened, I think, is the combination of getting challenged and pushed on those things from investors and wanting to come back with better answers. I always felt I learned a ton from going out to fundraise, whether it worked or not, because I had all these things that I was challenged on that I didn't have great answers to, and I was very intent on going back and having much better answers next time around. And so it gave a lot of focus and a lot of clarity on one, what investors what investors care about. Two, a lot of things they care about are actually the core things to make the business really work. And so you talk to enough smart people and they will point out areas you need to work on. And so unit economics was one that came up a lot for me, and I went back and got really deep on that. Plan B was to make the business better. The main way we did that is by raising prices. We had relatively thin margins, and they were getting kind of smaller because we were giving out lots of discounts, and we were discovering the power of sort of email marketing plus discounts. And as a result, kind of what we kept, even though there was a lot of money going through the system, we were keeping a relatively small percentage of them. What we decided to do basically across the company is do a price change. And we believed that we were delivering a lot of value and that people would continue to pay. Kind of did this really swiftly over the course of 1 week. The business responded amazingly well. People kept buying at the higher price point, but now all of a sudden we were keeping a lot more money ourselves. And so that kind of instantaneously made the business way, way better. The other thing we did is we started selling these long-term plans. The long-term plans people pay up front, and so you get a lot of cash up front. And so if you're a company that's trying to survive, it's really valuable to both have a healthier margin and have more cash up front. And it sounds simple when I describe it back. It's kind of these two things that really got the business into a much, much better position. But it was an effort across the whole team. And I think one of the things we did that I'm quite proud of, and I also grew a lot as a leader, was We brought the whole team in on it. We got in front of the whole company and said, as you guys know, we were planning on raising the Series A. It didn't happen. Here's what we're going to do about it. What we found is kind of before we had that conversation with the team, I think Kevin and I were a lot of arbitrary decisions. We were like, don't work on that, work on this instead. And I think what our team was doing is they were just continuing to execute on the original plan we had and kind of thinking many years out, how do we build the best company we possibly can? We were trying to survive. We were trying to make sure the company didn't run out of cash. What we realized is there was kind of a disconnect. What we were doing and what the team was thinking of, because they were missing, what do you do about that, I think, is you give them the context, you give them the full picture. That was scary. That was a scary thing to do, but I think it was also really empowering because all of a sudden, we entered that room with a team that was kind of misaligned because we didn't have this important shared context. And then we left that room incredibly aligned. Everyone really focused on this goal, and it just really accelerated our progress. I think it was a big kind of growth moment for me as a leader, seeing the power of you hire this team that you really believe in and you really trust. And I think we were fortunate to, we put a lot of faith in that team, and they were able to pull together for us and get the company through this kind of challenging chapter in our history. As stressful and hard as it was also one of the most productive periods in the company's history. And I think we've been benefiting from that productivity and those decisions for many, many years after that. In hindsight, it might have been actually one of the best things to happen in the company, even though it did not feel like it at all at the time. So I think a few things came to mind for me during YC. There's an extreme focus on growth, week over week growth. We were just kind of figuring out how do we hit next week's growth number, really laser focus on that. And it actually helped us identify a bottleneck in our marketplace. We actually had a bit of a supply bottleneck. We didn't have enough tutors online at every hour, and we didn't realize it. And I think just kind of staring at that number, being what are all the ways we can move this number? Not next month, not next year, but next week. And we ended up figuring out kind of this thing that once we fixed it, the supply bottleneck, our growth immediately popped. And so I think that extreme focus on short-term growth, I think is actually kind of healthy, especially in the early days to really validate what you're building and how to grow it. But I think one of the biggest takeaways we had and lessons we had from YC was learning how to tell our story to investors. I think we were working on this thing. We knew it was a big and important problem, but I'd never raised money before. Figuring out how to tell the story in a way that's most compelling to an investor community it's an art. It's a new skill you have to learn, and I think probably one of the most valuable things I got out of Y Combinator was getting way better at that. It's valuable. It was useful for me because I kind of had the before and after. I tried before doing Y Combinator, and then I tried after, and I got very different results in both cases. And so, even though I understood our business well, I think it was a step for me to learn how to tell the story in the most sort of compelling way, or the tightest pitch I possibly could. So yeah, it's been 10 years is a long time. I think it's been exciting and kind of fun every step of the way. Amazed I'm still working on the same problem, and I think maybe even more amazed that I'm as excited as ever about it. We've actually had a pretty exciting year. It makes me really sort of excited and optimistic about the future ahead. I think we're really just scratching the surface in terms of what Cambly could become. I mentioned this, there's 6 billion people in the world that don't know English. There's 1.5 billion that are actively learning it right now. As much progress we've made, we're at this point one of the largest, if not the largest, English education marketplaces in the world, English schools in the world. We are still serving a very small percentage of the English learners out there. Yeah, we've got a very long way to go. As far as we've come, we have still only reached a pretty small part of the 1.5 billion English learners, and so we've got a lot more ahead of us than behind us, and I think that keeps me excited and motivated to help more people, and yeah, I think we've got a lot of work ahead of us.